you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta
Hello everyone, and welcome again to another swell episode of the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Russell Glasser, and I know this is going to be a good show for two reasons. One is that my favorite co-host is here, Jeff D.
Thank you, Russell.
And the other is that the phones are sort of working again. So if you've suffered through the last month of no callers, it's not actually going to get a lot better this episode because you can call in now, but you can't talk at the same time as us. So what we're going to do is give you like 2 minutes to say your thing and then hang up, and then we will address it. So it's a bit better, and we're prepared with news if we need it. So everybody sit tight. Today is Sunday, January 9th, 2011. We are this is the first live show of 2011?
I think this is the first.
Awesome.
Live show of 2011.
We are breaking in the new year. We're a live call-in public access show based in Austin, Texas, and we're also available on the internet. You can check us out at ustream.tv, find out the details and anything else that you need to know at our website, www.atheist-experience.com. Find out more about our parent organization at www.atheist-community.org, and check out the unofficial show blog at atheistexperience.blogspot.com, and you can email us at tv@atheist-community.org, or dash, always, whatever. If you enjoy the show today, we're not meeting at Threadgill's. This being a new year, we're staking out a new place, and we're going to start out for the next few episodes going to El Arroyo on 1624 West 5th Street in downtown Austin, and I'll repeat that a few times just in case people tune in late. How have you been, Jeff?
I've been okay, Russell. Thank you. Yourself?
Very well, thanks. Good generic holiday?
Sure. Sure.
Okay.
I got kind of horribly sick on New Year's Eve.
I'm sorry, but good thing you're all better now, right?
I did not have a good beginning to my new year. I'm functional again.
Okay, that is a good thing.
Working really hard, trying to make a buck.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Me too. So, do you want to, let's see, while we wait for callers to line up, do you want to bring up something, or do you want me to first?
Why don't you start? You got more than me.
All right. I would like to start with one of my favorite guys, Bill O'Reilly. Oh no, where'd he go?
I think you can remember what that story's about, though, can't you?
So Bill O'Reilly had I guess he's the president of the American Atheists, Dave Silverman, on the O'Reilly Factor, which, I'm not sure if people should go on that show or not, but anyway, Dave Silverman is talking about his American Atheists' new ad campaign, they're all scams billboards.
Yeah.
American Atheists, telling the truth since 1963. And Bill O'Reilly does not take kindly to atheists. And so he had an argument which it was clear he thought was totally nailing Dave Silverman. He said, and these are the abridged quotes, "I'll tell you why it's not a scam in my opinion. Tide goes in, tide goes out. Never a miscommunication. You can't explain that. I say, listen, sun goes up, sun goes down. Tide comes in, tide goes out. There's no miscommunication. The sun goes up.
Miscommunication.
I don't know. He kept saying that.
It's like you know you see cartoons where like in a person's body there's all these little men running around operating the heart and the kidneys and the liver and stuff, and they have these little telephones,
little guys in hard hats, like sending telegraphs to each other.
That's apparently the way he thinks the universe is.
Yes.
It has all these little men behind the curtains. And because they manage to pull it off the same way every time, that's proof that that there's not, in fact, a lot.
Well, I mean,
what communication would there need to be if, in fact, it was all being caused by one single omnipotent creator being?
Well, there's a dude watching the clock down on Earth because God is.
That would take at least two dudes. You don't have. There's no such thing as communication within a single omnipresent entity.
I don't know.
Is he Catholic, though? They kind of believe in multiple things.
I believe that he is Catholic. Oh, no.
Whoa, hey.
Don't
They're
do
experimenting in the control room.
Yeah. So Stephen Colbert had this to say, like all great theologies, bills can be boiled down into one sentence. There must be a God because I don't know how things work.
Yeah. Do we need I guess it's possible we have viewers out there who don't understand
well, I mean, the funny
physics
thing about
behind
the sun
tides and the sunrise.
The funny thing about the sun one is that not only does Bill O'Reilly not understand how it works, but the sun doesn't actually go up and down.
Right. The Earth rotates, and we're on it. It rotates relative to the sun.
That is true.
And so it appears that the sun goes up and down.
I mean,
right? We dispense with that one. Now tides.
There was a point where they believed that Ra would ride across the sky in his barge every day.
Never a miscommunication.
Right. The ferryman, the guy at the dock, never was late and stopped Ra from leaving on schedule.
Right. Tides. We have a moon.
The moon.
The moon is not as big as the Earth, but it still exerts a gravitational pull. And that gravitational pull affects the oceans on the Earth. And that's tides, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, when the moon moves in a certain direction, the water of the Earth actually elongates slightly into an ellipse, which is pulled in the direction of the moon, so it's longer that way. And that's why it gets high in one place while it's low in another place. Science!
Because of physics, there's no communication whatsoever. Therefore, no miscommunications and no God required.
Of course, like usual, when a theist proposes a proof that there is a God, if this proof should fail, the proper scientific thing to do would be to say, oh, that proof didn't work, therefore this is now evidence against my God. Because that's what a proper scientific test
Because I defined my God in a way that proof is evidence of him. And if the proof doesn't work, you don't have that evidence of the God.
Yeah, and the way you set up a science experiment is you think of a thing that would be a test for God, or a test for the thing that you're trying to hypothesize, and then you honestly run the experiment, and if it turns out that it doesn't match your expectations, then you say, okay, this makes my hypothesis less likely to be true. But Bill O'Reilly would not do that. He was just throwing out whatever crap came into his head.
Should we maybe jump straight from this to the Pope weighing in on cosmology?
Why, certainly we should.
Because it's related, right? It's again this lackadaisical attitude that even religious people who claim not to be anti-science, they get away with that by just not understanding the science.
Right. I mean, they all give lip service to science. They say, actually, if you study science properly, it confirms a God. But then they never really care that much about matching up to the scientific method, which is kind of why Feynman coined the term cargo cult science, which you can look up, because we're not going to spend too much of our hour on that.
So what did the Pope say specifically?
The universe is not the result of chance, as some would want to make us believe, Pope Benedict said on the day Christians marked the Epiphany. This is from Catholic.org, by the way, so I don't know what their slant is going to be, but I can guess. The day the Bible says the three kings reached the site where Jesus was born by following a star. The Pope reiterated that God's plan was behind even such theories as the Big Bang, and Christians should reject the idea that the universe came into being by accident.
Nobody's saying the universe came into existence by accident. In Stephen Hawking's latest book, he says the universe came into existence inevitably because of fundamental, uncaused physical principles.
Right.
So already he's attacking a straw man.
The universe is not the result of chance, as some would want us to believe, Pope Benedict said. They're repeating the first paragraph. Contemplating it, we are invited to read something profound into it. The wisdom of the Creator, the inexhaustible creativity of God, the Pope said in a sermon to some 10,000 people in St. Peter's Basilica on the feast day. The Pope has rarely discussed specific concepts such as the Big Bang, which scientists believe led to, of course,
and I think that's been a good policy.
Yes. Led to the formation of the universe some 13.7 billion years ago. Well, this is random in this article, but researchers at CERN, the Nuclear Research Center in Geneva, have been smashing protons together at near the speed of light to simulate the conditions that they believe brought into existence in the primordial universe from which stars, planets, and life on Earth came into being. Benedict states that much scientific theorizing is mind-limiting because they only arrive at a certain point and do not manage to explain the ultimate sense of reality.
Can I just sort of rephrase that?
Yes.
Yeah, science is mind-limiting. It only leaves you, free to postulate things that you can actually prove.
That's so limiting.
It doesn't.
Though.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't let you completely free to just make shit up. And call that important.
Why are you so close-minded that the shit I make up is not treated with equal seriousness as stuff that has been observed and tested?
Yeah.
That angers me.
Yeah. Well, I do want to make a comment on this, the appearance by the American Atheist representative on the Bill O'Reilly show.
Yes.
I just want to say I'm not a big fan of that particular billboard. You know they're all scams.
Yeah.
Because that implies that there is currently behind every religion a conscious awareness that they're not true and all they're trying to do is rip people off. And I think that's going a little bit too far. Not a lot too far, but a little bit too far.
Okay, I agree with you if that's their point. But I'll give you an alternate spin on it,
okay.
which might be their point, and
okay.
I guess we'd have to.
I would love
talk
to.
to them
I would
and
love
find
to
out.
like their billboard better. Go ahead.
I think when somebody does a billboard with a giant cheeseburger and it says, something like, you want one. It is not assumed that every single person looking at the billboard is going to actually want a cheeseburger, like if they're vegetarian or something.
Yeah.
But instead, it's meant to target the people for whom that would be particularly appealing. And if there happen to be a bunch of people driving past the board and a few of them look at it and say, it's a scam? That's interesting.
Yeah, but the implication is that the people that they are talking to all are aware that religions are all scams, and the sense of the word scam that I'm objecting to, right, is a thing which I think is going a bit far. They're still saying that. They think it's inaccurate. Right. I mean, if there was a big billboard with a burger on it and said, it's made of soy protein, and we don't actually know that, I'd have the same kind of objection.
So if the billboard said, that it's all wishful thinking.
Right. I have no problem with that. And
billboard.
After hearing Bill O'Reilly, I'm tempted to suggest a rephrasing, they're all ignoramuses. But even that's probably still going too far. But I just want to make that point.
Okay.
And it was brought to my attention by him.
So what we're going to do now is, I think, spin the roulette wheel, pull the casino handle, and see what happens when we push the button that brings up someone on the phone.
Let's try it.
So as I just want to remind people who are on the phones, we cannot have a conversation today, apparently. There are technical issues still going on in the studio. So we're going to let you talk for a little while and then try to hang up within 2 minutes unless you've got something really great to say. So we'll see how this works. First, we have Luka in New York.
Hello, guys. I hope you can hear me. What I wanted to say is I wanted to provide what I think is a really effective argument that we can use as atheists against people that have a homophobic or anti-gay stance based on their Bible beliefs. And basically, it starts by making them read John 13, which, as you guys probably know, it tells the story of how Jesus, in the middle of the Last Supper, gets up, takes all his clothes off, puts a towel around his waist, gets on his hands and knees, and washes the feet of 12 grown men. And then uses this towel that was around his genitals area to dry their feet, meaning the only way he could have done it was by rubbing their feet around his groin. And obviously the argument is not, hey, see, we've cherry-picked this little portion of the Bible that seems homoerotic or whatever, and therefore God is pro-gay. The argument is to say that it's just as absurd to cherry-pick that portion as it is absurd to cherry-pick a portion of the Old Testament that says, the Bible is anti-gay or that homosexuality is an abomination. And that basically the Bible is so broad, there's so many authors, so many books, so many points of view, that you can make any argument and find some kind of portion of the Bible that supports that argument or the opposite of that argument, and therefore the whole thing is a meaningless endeavor. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about that, and hopefully it went through. Okay, thank you so much, guys. I'm a huge fan of your wonderful show.
Thanks, Luka.
Okay.
Can they hear us now?
Thanks for calling.
We hope they can hear us now.
Yeah, we got guys in the studio manually turning the volume up and down.
Well, what do you think about that?
I take your point about the about cherry picking the Bible. I don't think a religious person would.
Yeah, I also don't think that a lot of cherry picking is necessary to find the explicitly anti-gay statements that are in the Bible.
That is true.
So I think that's maybe a bit of a stretch.
Right, but I mean, like you always say, the Bible is the big book of multiple choice.
It is,
so,
but there's other.
There are verses in there which can be used to very strongly support abortion, for instance.
Where are the parts of the Bible that can be used to very strongly support gay rights? Other than generic sort of "be nice to people" kind of statements, right?
There aren't really that many.
Yeah, that's my
that I know of. Okay.
That went well.
That went all right.
What's next?
Moving right along, we got, let's see, Bito in Tallahassee, Florida. Go.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. I'm really glad that the last caller talked about that because I actually have a somewhat similar topic, only mine's more of a story. So I'm in college now, but last year I was in high school. And we had an extremely heavy Christian presence in the drama program. And one of the teacher was extremely religious, and the class was kind of seen as like a safe haven for a lot of the Christian kids. One of the problems we had towards the end of the year was one of the openly gay, at the time, drama students was, he had just come out to everyone in that class. And she actually rounded up a group of the Christian kids and confronted him during class about his homosexuality and told him that he could make a change, that I believe the words she said was, God doesn't make abominations, and therefore you can't be gay. Pretty much a slew of all these things about how his homosexuality is wrong, and this is in the middle of class in a public school. And it was honestly one of the most appalling things I think I've ever witnessed. And I guess I just basically kind of wanted your thoughts on this.
Wait a second.
And I guess, it's been several months. I don't think there's much I can do at this point. I wish I had reported it, but I just didn't really think to. And I guess I just wanted your guys' thoughts on that. And with that, I'm going to hang up now. And thank you for wonderful show.
Don't hang up yet.
Wait, stay on the line.
Hold it.
Now he's gone.
Oh, well. So I guess the phones aren't necessarily fixed, but we got a signal, so we're going to try it with the next caller.
Okay. So what is... I'll say my reaction to that is, I'm against that.
Me too.
Okay.
That was controversial.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of thing goes on all the time.
It's tricky because I want to say that a teacher should not under any circumstances, personally ridicule a student, and I really do think that's true.
Okay, good.
Although, I mean, you know, I'm trying to think of how you should react to a creationist in your biology class. But,
right.
But I mean, you should ridicule ideas and not people.
Yeah. Well, if you're dealing with a creationist in biology class, you can say to that student, "We're doing biology here today, and you can believe whatever you want." Right. I don't know. What did he say that was a drama class?
Yeah, which you would expect to find more gays in there.
I guess the teacher could have said, "We're doing drama today," but I think when you round up a bunch of Christian students and corner a gay guy and harass him, you are doing drama.
Indefensible.
So, well.
Blah.
Ick.
Fire that person. Okay, so we are going to try to speak with Shawn in New York, and we're going to, well, Shawn, are you there?
Hey, Jeff and Russell.
Yes,
Hi,
I
Shawn,
hear you.
can you hear us?
Nice
Shawn.
to have the show back.
Wait,
hopefully you can hear me.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Shawn?
If you're trying to talk, there's a big lag, so I don't think the conversation is going to be possible.
Okay, got
That's
it.
probably
Thanks.
from your TV.
In any case, let me.
Go ahead.
I'll kind of get my 2 minutes in, and you can respond. Well, you started off the show talking about David Silverman on Bill O'Reilly, and I saw that little snippet on the internet also. And Bill O'Reilly is really amazed that the tide goes in and the tide goes out without any miscommunication, to quote him. Though it's surprising that even though he works in the news media, I guess he just wasn't paying attention in 2004 with the Indian Ocean tsunami, which only killed, over 200,000 people. If that's not a miscommunication of the tides, then I don't really know what is. In any case, I was a little bit upset that David Silverman didn't field the question much better. Pointing out that this God of the Gaps argument of Bill's wasn't really that satisfactory. In any case, talking about the actual atheist advertising campaign that's been kind of going around with the holidays, the reason that David Silverman was even on O'Reilly's show, I'm wondering what your take is on how atheists and atheist organizations should kind of present themselves to the public. I think atheists already have an unfortunate and undeserved reputation for kind of snottiness, or kind of looking down their nose at theists and everything. And so I'm wondering if that should be taken into account when atheist organizations kind of put up billboards and try to, make themselves available to the public. I'm wondering if, especially the latest campaigns by the American Atheist, if it's doing more harm than good. David Silverman was saying how the aim was to bring atheists out of the closet, out of churches and everything. But if the American Atheists are actually hurting the public image of atheists, then people won't want to come out of the closet, it seems to me. So ultimately, what's the best way, do you think, to integrate atheists into culture as a whole? Should we be especially careful not to kind of use honey rather than vinegar? When we're presenting ourselves, or when we're kind of working with these advertising campaigns and all. Maybe you'd like to talk about that, and I appreciate your time. Nice to have you guys back.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Well,
so what he's saying in a nutshell is, don't be a dick.
Who is?
The caller.
Oh. I think the caller was asking us what we thought.
Well, actually, I brought up a pretty relevant article, I think, by Greta Christina, who is a prominent atheist blogger that she wrote earlier this week. You can follow along if you look up "Why Are Believers So Hostile Toward Atheists" by Greta Christina. And she kind of makes the point that, people are always accusing atheists of being so negative, but really when you come right down to it, there's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because it seems from past experience that whatever atheists do to express themselves, unless they're sitting down and shutting up, or unless there's someone like S.E. Cupp who's out there saying, "Oh, I think religion is wonderful and I think other atheists should shut up," you can't win, because...
Well, it's funny that you put it that way, damned if you do, damned if you don't, because what do they think atheists are? Well, damned.
Well,
so then, once we've reached that point, it doesn't matter what you say anymore. but yeah, you're right. I mean, if atheists who you know, publicly state any disagreement with religion whatsoever are immediately labeled, you know, hostile, shrill, strident, whatever, you know, the term of the moment is.
Right. Now,
and that's then, so, you know, to me, the issue with, and I talked about this earlier, maybe our caller didn't hear, but my issue with the American Atheist billboard is not that it's shrill or strident, but that it is, it implies something that is factually not supportable. And, and that, to me, is the issue. I mean, after that, I think anybody who's watched the show and seen me on here before knows that I don't much mind getting a little aggressive about it. But, you know, that's only justified if you can, in fact, defend your position.
Yeah. Now, in this article of Greta Christina's, she brought up Elizabeth Edwards, who recently died of her cancer. And Elizabeth Edwards, when she died, issued a farewell statement where she was basically talking about the hope and meaning that she found in her life through her family and I guess her public works that she did. And a bunch of right-wing fundamentalists got mad that she didn't talk enough about God in that one. So this Donald Douglas guy comes up and says, clearly Elizabeth Edwards wants to put her faith in something, be it hope or strength or anything, but not God. I wonder if it's just bitterness that she's been forsaken by more than just her estranged husband, that she's been forsaken by him. Right. And imagine if she'd become the first lady, and then it goes off.
She's accused of being shrill and strident against Christianity when she was absolutely not.
Yeah. And so the problem is, and she touches on this at the end of the article, Christianity is based on the assertion that there is only one way to peace and happiness and living forever, which is Jesus Christ. And if there is any other alternative, if you can be happy and content with your life without being, without believing in their invisible man in the sky, then to some extent, the basic message is a lie.
Right. They think then you are attacking what really is the only one way you can actually do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, by the way, that is a threat.
I just want to mention for our previous caller that tsunamis are really a separate mechanism from tides. That's
true.
That's is it earthquake activity under the oceans? It's not caused. It has nothing to do with the mechanism we call tides. It's
right, except that to someone like Bill O'Reilly, who, you know, it's
to somebody
a big,
like Bill O'Reilly,
wave.
he thinks the tide was on purpose. That was a perfect, you know, carrying out of God's plan to destroy a bunch of people for whatever sins he thought that they were committing
Absolutely.
there.
And I do want to say something in defense of Dave Silverman, since a lot of people are picking on him for not having come up with, you know, you idiot, it's the moon.
Well, that would have been shrill and strident.
It would have been, yeah. But, I mean, you know, being on TV a lot with hostile people already talking to us, and not even someone as nakedly hostile as Bill O'Reilly most of the time, it's hard to come up with stuff off the cuff. And, you know, there's a lot of that syndrome where you think of the perfect insult an hour after the party's over.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. I guess that's all I have to say about that.
All right.
Let's go on to Keith in Flemington, New Jersey. Go.
Hi, how are you? I hope you guys can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I really want to thank you guys for everything. I think that now that I listen to your show and a lot of other atheists or agnostics out there, I feel like I'm actually talking to intellectuals rather than people that are just proclaiming faith, myth, whatever you want to call it. So I just want to, first of all, thank you for that. It's opened up a whole other world for me, and a very interesting world at that. The one thing I have to ask you guys that I find very compelling is the fact of the a lot of the out-of-body experiences and the after-death or near-death experiences, the NDEs. There's been a lot of stories that I've seen, heard, read about that are so similar, and they seem so personal to the person. And I'm not talking about a dream. I'm talking about things that people have experienced that they wouldn't be able to experience unless they were there, but they were actually out. Different accounts from neurologists during brain surgery that the patient in no way would be coherent. Not only could they not hear anything, they wouldn't be able to speak or see because they had all the blood drained out of their brain. And her name was Pam Reynolds. Was that one account? There were books written about her experience. She, in detail, she described the drill they were using on her and the sounds and the things around her, like she was hovering almost over the bed. And things that, the doctors were interviewed, and they said there's no way that any of that can ever happen, and they were just mortified. They were thrown back by the whole situation. And there are a lot of accounts like this. It's not just, I just saw a light. It's more like I saw what was going on around me. I was able to float into other rooms, saw what people were talking about, and they confirmed with those people that things were true. What do you guys have to say about that?
Okay.
Thanks for calling, Keith, and we're gonna take your call off the air. You want to go first?
People have been claiming that kind of stuff for a long time, and yet for some reason it's not those kinds of claims are not making a dent in the scientific understanding of life and how the brain works and so on. So I haven't done those studies myself, but it's just like when I get my plumbing done, I go to a plumber. When I get my science done, I go to a scientist. And to my knowledge, scientists are not buying it. So I don't know what the specific problems with those claims are, but I'm going to go for now on the assumption that there are some, and you might want to take a much closer look at the refutations of those claims.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to claim that I'm familiar with these in detail, but while you were talking, I looked up the name of the person you were talking about and found a fairly long article on infidels.org by a guy named Keith Augustine called Hallucinatory Near-Death Experiences, where he talks about this stuff. There's also something on the Skeptics Dictionary, that's skepdic.com. There's an entire article on out-of-body experiences. And basically there's a few things that you can say about that sort of thing. One is the human mind is kind of weird. People have what they consider to be extremely vivid experiences, and even the memories of other people who you explain those experiences to can be sort of twisted around to match your experience. Like, I'm a big fan of the movie Memento, where the guy basically thinks that, it's a big exploration about how memory works and how people convince themselves retroactively that something really happened exactly some way when it's actually just part of a story that they told themselves in their heads. Bottom line is this person may have believed that she viewed things that couldn't possibly be explained, but then, a combination of lucky guesses and people retrofitting their memories to match what she said, it's not all that far outside of the explainable, especially when you think about how many people claim out-of-body experiences that don't have so much evidence, or supposed evidence. Somebody is bound to get lucky sooner or later and have some surprising seeming coincidences happen. That's just probability.
Yeah. And I'll add, what we do know about the brain and how it works does not allow for actual out-of-body experiences. That your nerve impulses get carried through nerves in your body. Those nerves do not extend out of your body, enabling you to have your consciousness out elsewhere. And so on the one hand, what we do know about the brain doesn't allow for this. The other thing is, there's not big mysteries about the brain that require something like a separate spooky soul to explain them. So we don't need to, to postulate such a thing in the first place. The only mystery here is how come there are so many of these stories, but there can be a lot of explanations to that other than, well, there's actually souls, even though, as far as we know, the human body doesn't really need them in order to be alive and think and stuff.
Right. I'm going to go straight from that to another guy. Ed in Buenos Aires, Argentina, says that he's had out-of-body experiences, but still thinks they're an illusion and knows why.
Interesting.
Ed, are you there?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I used to have really high fevers, like when I was 6, 7 years old, and I would get a lot of hallucinations. Like I would see people, I would hear voices, I would see monsters. Once I saw a giant dragonfly, and I would tell my parents, like, listen, I'm seeing these things, right? And they would say, like, no, you're imagining them. I was raised a skeptic and an atheist, and I think that helped a lot. And when I was a teenager, I started having out-of-body experiences, and I would feel like I was being connected to this whole spiritual thing, and I would sense presences and stuff. And at first I was like, wow, maybe there are spirits, maybe this is like the real thing. And I started to question it. Since I was an atheist and a skeptic, I started like, okay, how can I prove this? How can I see if this is real? And I trained myself to be able to have out-of-body experiences on demand, and I would do things like I would hide a card, pick it out at random, and just throw it in the living room or whatever, and try and fly there and see what card it was, or try and contact, the spiritual presences that I felt. And obviously, every single experiment I ever did failed miserably, and I think that's something that nobody does. I've talked to people who have had out-of-body experiences, or who claim that they prove that a soul exists or something, and they haven't really done anything with it. I mean, I did a lot of work with it, and I can tell you, I know the feeling. You feel like you're with a community of people. You feel like someone greater is there and everything. And it's just a feeling. It's just the same thing I used to have when I had a high fever and I would listen to 3 voices talking to me at the same time. Or when I would imagine everything moving much faster. It's just a part of the brain that gets crazy for a bit, whether it's because of stress or fever, or it's like a graphics card. When it gets hot, it starts doing things it shouldn't do. And whatever, that's my experience. I wanted it to share it with you because I know that a lot of people call and say like, oh, whatever, I had this out-of-body experiences. How can you explain that? Well, I had them too, and you don't need to believe in them. You can test them, you can try and do things with them, and you'll see that they're just illusions.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, Ed.
Yeah,
and
thanks for
I gotta
calling.
say, the card thing was awesome. I mean, not very many people would think to do that, would have the presence of mind to say, I wonder. I mean, he didn't go at it by saying, oh, this is definitely not spirits. He went after it with the point of view, like,
if it's true,
it could be spirits.
then this should work.
Right.
Right.
And he tried it, and it didn't work, and then he used that to disconfirm the theory, which is exactly what we were talking about earlier.
That's science. And one of the things we do know about the brain and how it works is that there are parts of the brain that generate things like our sense of location. And all you need to do to account for this sense that you're not in your body is something has misfired in your brain. Mm-hmm. By the way, there's a great short science fiction story by one of my favorite science fiction authors, Greg Egan. I forget the name of the story, but the premise is the main character has a very specific kind of brain injury that gives him a permanent out-of-body experience. Like he walks around and sees himself from outside.
Oh, weird.
And he's always from a certain position. And then he discovers that, like, oh, the things that he sees that are outside the field of vision of his actual body are imaginary. So his part of his field of vision is real stuff that he can rely on, and part of it is an approximation that he's making up from what he can see through his eyes. It's a science fiction story, right?
Yeah.
Exploring the concept.
Sounds like a good story.
Yeah, he's a good author.
I liked the also the analogy of the wonky graphics card, because
Yes,
I had a bad graphics card once, and what would happen was that periodically funny patterns would show up on my screen, like sparkly things or like light bursts that would come from a particular point.
Yeah.
Like there would be some wedges on my screen,
right.
And things would get very colorful, and you would see things. I mean, you know, this is just a piece of hardware designed to show us
right.
You know, reliable stuff about the internal state of the computer, and it was going wrong.
But what would never happen, no matter how wonky it got, is the processing that's going on in your computer here would not suddenly start going on over here in space somewhere outside of its circuitry.
That's true.
Which is what we're being asked to believe happens in out-of-body experiences.
Yeah. So we're, I guess, 40 minutes in, and I think it's a good time to mention that we will not be going to Thread Guilds this week. Instead, we will be going to El Arroyo, 1624 West 5th Street in downtown Austin. So I'm sure we'll stick with that for at least a few weeks, so make a note of it. And we're going to go on to Spencer in Salt Lake City. That was me.
Hi. I can't hear you. I could hear you a second ago. Okay. But, okay, so here's basically it. I live in Utah, where all the Mormons live. Most of my extended family is Mormon. About half of my immediate family is Mormon. My brother's a returned missionary, and unfortunately he got back from his mission. He was here for a few days, and then he went back home to Indiana. And the problem is, I'm an agnostic atheist, and I don't really know how to communicate with him or to open the lines of communication about things like this, because he lives across the country, and I don't really know how to talk about this thing. And I don't want to proselytize to him or anything, but he spent 2 years proselytizing to others, and I just want to know how I can talk to him about these kinds of things if they come up. And it's because that's basically my question.
Okay, thanks.
Wow. That's hard to say without knowing a lot more about where both of you are, you know, coming from and what your relationship is. Russell, you've probably got less experience with religious family members than I do.
That's true. I've got some experience with religious in-laws, which has been a miserable failure.
Oh boy. Let's start there.
No, I don't want to start there. But my experience with atheist evangelism, so to speak, a term that I've used in the past, is you really can't wrap up your ego in the idea that you're going to convince one person to change their mind. It's a nice bonus if you can pull it off, but overall, it's rare that people make a big jump to, like, you know, a fundamentalist Mormon or whatever you would call it. Oh, by the way, I think we're running out of calls, so if you could put the number back up there, that would be a pretty good idea, probably. Let's see. But, I mean, if you want to talk one guy around, you're pretty likely to be frustrated. That's not to say that you can't have a conversation with the person, but I would say that you should approach it with the point of view that you're going to educate yourself better about what this person really thinks. Because the process of arguing with somebody who's really convinced of something mistaken is self-educational, I would say. You can learn the kind of arguments people would make, and then when you take a while to think about what's wrong with those arguments, then maybe you can turn around and have discussions about this from a little stronger knowledge base with more reasonable people. But at best, the best I would hope for is that if I was talking to a heavily religious person, then I would eventually get them to at least accept some change of thinking about logic or science, small changes. What would you say about that?
That sounds like good advice, but it's different from the advice I would use. What we don't know about Spencer is whether he himself was raised Mormon.
Right.
I would guess probably the answer is yes. And if that's the case, he's more in my boat. I mean, when I talk to my religious relatives, I already know, I mean, I was raised with the beliefs that they have. I know what they are. So I don't really have room for that self-education angle. And it's more like, for me, it's been just, you need to demand that you get respect. You know, not more respect than anybody else in the family, but equal respect to anyone else in the family. And then if you can achieve that, then you pretty much just go along with your relationship, and eventually, over time, if your relative is paying attention, they start to notice that you're not, you don't fit the cartoon characterization of atheists that they tend to get from their religion, and that will help your relationship. That's all I got for you, though.
That's a good point. So, I mean, your approach would not be so much to make him stop being a Mormon, but to
Spencer didn't say convert. I mean, if you want to convert, I wouldn't... in my experience, I mean, I've just stayed away from trying to convert my relatives because it's just too painful, right? And honestly, I mean, most of my interacting with theists is on this show, where we also don't really make it our business to convert people. But the arguments are more, I don't know, similar to that here on the show. With my relatives, though, I never really went there. I don't try to talk them out of the stuff that they believe. I think that if they realize that if you can be an example of how what they're told in their religion is false by not fitting the stereotype that they have been told to expect, then that's a little bit of headway you can make.
In my opinion, there's a great art to trying to read the person that you're talking to and understand who your audience is, and and what they're thinking and what your objectives are in terms of talking to them. And if the idea is just to talk to somebody and try to get their respect and try to get them to admit that just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you're not still the brother that they loved and respected in the past, then I would say, that is certainly feasible. And one of the things that I try to do in a conversation is try to sort of winnow down the irrelevant stuff, like, whether I'm going to heaven or hell is not necessarily relevant to the detail of trying to be taken seriously by the religious person.
But it is a big deal on the question of respect.
True.
Right? Because, and that's, if you're dealing with family members who love you, and they're being told that because you've become an atheist, therefore you're going to be tortured forever. I mean,
sure,
that is an issue for them that you might want to ask them to confront.
Right. Yeah, so basically narrow down the topic to whatever is the biggest concern for them, or what is the closest point of approach where you guys have some essential disagreement that needs to be talked about. It's not necessarily going to be there's a God or there's no God, or, Moroni showed Joseph Smith these golden tablets or not, because those are, when you come down to it, those are side issues to the bigger, meatier issues that might be in play also.
Right. How much time we got left? Do you want to go into this thing that I brought?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We frequently get email, and it's always enjoyable. And this letter that I'm going to read bits of has been answered, but I thought that it was a good topic to bring up on the show. And I don't know whether this person would mind being identified, so I won't. But they write, he says, the default position is to reject a claim until there is sufficient evidence. So if you say, this God exists, you have to prove it exists. I think that's correct, that it should be like that. But is it really fair in this case? I mean, the God that is believed in is invisible and untouchable, and you can only be sure that it exists or not after you die. What would you do if you were a God that rewards gullibility? I'm not sure what he means by that. He says it's kind of hard to prove something like that. So his point is it fair to hold to a standard of, you know, refraining from belief until the thing is proved when you're dealing with things that are hard to prove?
I know what he means by a God who rewards gullibility.
What does he mean?
Bill Hicks has a routine where he talks about Satan tempting people by hiding fossils. Or no, God actually. You know, that's just God trying to tempt you. And you know, imagine it's a trickster God, you know, ha ha ha, let's see people believe in me now.
So you're saying...
But he rewards people for rejecting the evidence and believing on faith instead.
Okay, so that's just more, you know, back on this idea that some things are hard to prove. So is it fair to hold to a standard of refraining from belief in such things until they are proved?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously it is. What is the alternative? I mean, what are we supposed to to lower our standards of evidence when things are harder to prove? Isn't that exactly backward?
Yes.
I'm asking you because we're the only people who can talk about this.
I mean, I think it's exactly backwards.
No, I see where he's coming from, right? It's like, you know, this guy wants me to believe this thing, and he can't prove it, and I really want to help him out.
Mm-hmm.
But that really doesn't enter into it. What matters is still whether you can prove the thing or not. I thought of this analogy, right? Is it fair that gold is really valuable and dirt isn't? Well, no, it's not fair, right? I mean, some people can, you know, pick up a rock and it's gold and they just made $1,000, and other people reach down, most people reach down and pick up a clump of dirt and they've got a clump of dirt, right?
Yeah,
it's not fair. It's not fair. But the reason why the gold is more valuable is because it is more rare. And my point is, knowledge that is harder to come by, but still true and accurate, is more valuable. So yeah, you damn well hold to your standard of not refraining from belief until it's proved. But the kinds of things that are hard to prove are the more astonishing, amazing, valuable, impressive things.
Yeah.
Right? If I, you know, I'm asking people to believe that there's a cup on this piece of paper. Now the camera's not on it, but I have put my water cup on my piece of paper, right? If I'm asking people to believe that, well, there, you can look at it. It's proved, right?
It's evidenced.
If you really want, you can come over and pick it up and check it out, right, yourself. Easy, right? How much is that piece of information worth? Not much.
Not very much.
Right? But I ask you to believe that there is an invisible entity that existed before the universe and created the universe and did all this stuff, right, and has all these attitudes about things. I mean, that's a much bigger deal. If I could prove that, that would be worth a lot. That would have huge impacts on everything that we think.
And it's maybe not fair that it's hard to prove that.
But it is fair because of how important that piece of knowledge would be if you could prove it.
Right.
Right?
I have actually another example that I'd like to bring up because quack psychics are really skilled at coming up with ad hoc explanations for why their things aren't testable. They'll say like, oh, it was all the negative energy in the room that prevented me from actually talking to the dead and learning things when I was put on the spot. So I say, suppose we actually lived in a universe where there were spirits of the dead all around us all the time, but you still couldn't prove it. So you have some people who are genuinely talking to the dead and learning valuable things. Even in that universe, I guarantee you there would be quacks who have no special powers, but claim that their special powers to talk to the dead work for personal gain.
Right,
because
of course there would be.
They see these real psychics have a good thing going. They can, you know, they can get a lot of money being a medium. So they're like, I want in on this action, and all I have to do is make stuff up because it's untestable.
Right, and yeah, that to sort of bring that to the analogy that I was making with gold, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, claiming that you have knowledge of something that is really, really, really hard to prove mm-hmm. is something, on a certain level, something like claiming that you have a whole bunch of gold that you can't produce.
Right.
And then expecting people to sell you things on credit based on this gold that you have that you can't produce and can't prove that you have.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, bottom line with the skeptic thing is that even if it was true that the ghosts were talking to some select people, it would still be useless given the fact that these scammers exist. If you couldn't show that you're one of the real ones and
right.
not the scammers.
Right. That's
so
exactly right.
So even if it's true, you still need a good test.
Yeah, but if there were real psychics talking to real ghosts, you could prove it.
You could.
Because those ghosts would know stuff that only they would know, and you'd be able to get that information.
Right,
and not
but that's
just,
not the case with the skeptics we have here in this world. They suck at that.
Yeah.
All
right.
We only have a couple minutes left, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to do some triage here, so I'm going to Jeff in Edmonton, and you're probably going to be the last caller.
Oh.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Hello?
Talk.
Yeah. Yes, you're on.
Hello?
Yes, talk.
Hi.
We're having trouble with the phones today.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just trying to, yeah. Okay, well, thanks a lot, guys. Just, just to sort of, I've been watching this show for a while. Well, I discovered it through YouTube, and mostly through clips. Really enjoy the show, and really appreciate the efforts you guys have been making as far as trying to enlighten people is concerned, especially where you guys are at. There's a reason I was calling, because I came across this clip from the September 19th show of last year, where this guy named Troy, who was also from Edmonton, tried to talk about or tried to argue in favor of intelligent design. And I think, remember, Russell, you were one of the hosts in that episode, along with Martin. And, basically his argument was that, something couldn't come from nothing. Anyway, so I mean, the reason, I'd like to think that, the number of people or the amount of ignorance that we've got in Canada was less than from what I've seen, based on the callers I've listened to watching clips of this show. But it brought to mind because one of the big issues, of course, is education. I mean, they can believe people. If people want to be religious, that's fine. But, when they try to, start imposing their beliefs on others via education, then, I, like a lot of other atheists, have a problem with that. And there was a bill passed, I think it was only last year in this province, that basically allowed, it allows parents to pull their children out of classes that are teaching topics that they deem to be inappropriate, including evolution and homosexuality. And I wasn't too impressed with that, because I was thinking, people like Troy are exactly the kind of people that could have benefited.
I'm really sorry. We'd like to talk about this more, but we are flat out of time. And don't worry, I don't consider Troy to be representative of Canada in general. That's our show. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And don't forget to come to El Arroyo in about half an hour. Thanks, Jeff, for being on.
Thanks, Russell. This was fun.
Yeah, always. See you later.
Bye, folks.